So Lucid just landed a huge partnership with Uber, and I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. I definitely didn't, but it's kind of a triple partnership because Nuro is also in there. A fairly small, not super well-known autonomous vehicle company, but I did do a couple seconds of research before recording this video, and it appears they've been focused on doing a lot of autonomous delivery services for the past few years. They have over 1 million miles clocked autonomously with no public collisions ever recorded on public roads, mind you. So they've been in the autonomous driving industry for a while, and they have a lot of software and sensors, obviously, that they've calibrated their system for that Lucid is going to be strapping to their roof and doing autonomous RoboTaxi rides starting next year, which is pretty exciting because the Lucid Gravity was already a super impressive vehicle to me for the amazing range, the great charging performance, and all of that. But now, through this collaboration with Uber and Nuro, it looks like Uber is going to be purchasing at least 20,000 Lucid vehicles, and simultaneously they're going to be investing $300 million into the company itself. Of course, Lucid stock is very happy this morning. Haven't seen an EV stock move that much since the president was elected, but it's cool when the stock actually performs based on something the company is doing and not just the CEO, right? Anyway, 20,000 vehicles or more is what all these announcements are saying is quite substantial when you consider how many vehicles Lucid is currently delivering per quarter. I mean, usually it's around 2,000 or 3,000 vehicles a quarter, basically a run rate of, 10 to 15,000 vehicles per year, and yet Uber's going to be buying at least 20,000 vehicles over the course of 6 years. That's pretty darn impressive. That's going to be a lot of high-priced vehicles. Maybe Lucid's giving them a discount to buy in bulk, and over the course of 6 years, we might learn a lot more about the Lucid midsize vehicle, which supposedly could get unveiled later this year. Here's hoping. I'm very curious about that one. It's a very popular vehicle segment. Model Y is the best-selling EV in the world. You've got Rivian R2 around the corner, which I'm very excited about, but you also have Lucid with the most efficient and highest range vehicles on the market. They should have something pretty interesting for that segment, but what's interesting to me about this announcement is the involvement of Nuro, because we know Lucid has been offering LiDAR and radar options for autonomous driving functionality in their cars for a while, and there's some more self-driving updates I'll talk about in tomorrow's video. But what's interesting to me is that despite all of this Dream Drive Pro hardware on the Lucid Gravity, Nuro still wants to add these additional sensors on the top. I'm sure that's going to eat into the aero, so at highway speed at least, the Lucid Gravity is likely not going to get its full 450 miles of range with this attachment, but I think most people can agree that the autonomous driving is probably not going to be for road trips. They're talking about launching in a city next year, so I think similar to what we see with Waymo and even Tesla's RoboTaxis in Austin, the autonomous Uber driving is likely just going to be city and urban driving. You're probably not even going to get to that high of a speed, in which case the Gravity is likely going to get over 450 miles of range, because on average it's probably going to be around 40 or 50 miles an hour. But it does make me wonder if there's more to this collaboration than meets the eye. Like, is Nuro going to start taking over some of the autonomous driving functionality in Lucid's vehicles? And if they're going to be adding LiDAR and radar sensors to the top of the Gravity like this, why include additional radars and LiDARs in the car itself? Maybe they work in conjunction with each other. They haven't dove into too much detail yet, but the important thing about this announcement is I don't think Uber would be investing $300 million into Lucid if they thought the company was going to go under in a year or two, which is kind of what a lot of the Lucid haters and deniers have been saying for years, like, oh no, don't buy a car from this company because they're about to go belly up, they're about to go bankrupt. Well, this is kind of one of those partnerships that shows big money and the big established players in the software space and autonomous driving space. They see Lucid as sticking around for the long haul. They're talking about making plans over the next 6 years, and I will say a big issue Lucid has had over the past few years is demand. They've had incredible products, but they've had a hard time getting enough people to buy them, so locking in such a large fleet order of 20,000 or more vehicles, especially on pretty pricey units, maybe Uber knows something about the midsize platform that we don't, and they plan on mostly buying those, but that's not really included in this announcement. They're mostly talking about how the Lucid Gravity is just so luxurious and should provide really good, comfortable rides for their customers, and they talk about how they love of the high range, which means that it has more uptime out in the field. These gravities are just going to be driving around for hours and hours and not needing to come back and be recharged because they've got massive battery packs and extremely efficient motors. But I would also wonder if Lucid would consider making specific versions of the Gravity for autonomous driving. For example, you probably don't need all-wheel drive if you're just driving around cities. Honestly, as much as they bragged about the 450 miles of range in the announcement, you could probably get a lot more range out of a smaller battery pack if the vehicle's never really going on freeways, or at least for not that long. I also don't think the Gravity needs all this crazy infotainment in the front with, you know, the giant driver display and the landscape display up front if passengers aren't sitting up there. So I would suggest either scrapping a lot of the driver-focused hardware on these versions of the Gravity, maybe focusing more on that second row, which typically, at least in the case of Waymos, is where people tend to sit, and maybe you want to make use of those displays in the front, in which case just find a way to drop the steering wheel, which would definitely look pretty trippy. Lucid has always had more of a driving focus with their vehicles, so it's kind of interesting to see such a driver-focused vehicle now being pitched as an autonomous driving one. But this is clearly where a lot of the investment is going these days. You know, a lot of people are betting big on RoboTaxis, and Lucid is probably getting at least some pressure from their Saudi investment on, hey, can you guys like start turning a profit at some point and maybe getting into the rideshare business, or at least securing some really long-term contracts for fleet buyers is a good way to start inking towards that profitability path. And that probably explains why there's a lot of people interested in buying the stock now. But I'm no investment channel. I do not own any EV stocks. They're all too volatile for me, so I would just say don't invest anything you can't afford to lose, because as we've seen in the past, sometimes these stocks behave very irrationally outside of how the company is performing. And Lucid vehicles are still nowhere near profitable at this point, nor is the company. But I'd be very curious to see a Lucid version of a Cybercab. How would they make a smaller, more efficient vehicle with lower occupancy that would be good for city urban driving? I'm sure it'd be interesting. But what do you guys think of this huge partnership with Uber? Do you think this is the right call for Lucid, or do you think this is a distraction? Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.